I had to compile a list of things that I expected to happen at the end of the first They Hunger, I think that being ambushed, arrested, and imprisoned by a gang of zombie cops taking orders from an undead sheriff would have been relatively low down on the list, but here we are nonetheless. So, where do we go from here? Out the hole in the back of the jail cell, apparently, opened courtesy of a non-undead cop with access to a rocket launcher. You know, standard police force equipment. If They Hunger Part 1 was all about dealing with the immediate consequences of a zombie uprising, then They Hunger Part 2 is certainly about discovering the root cause of how this came to pass. It certainly offers up an intriguing plot thread to kick things off, presenting you with a very articulate, albeit extremely redneck undead sheriff offering up orders to his zombified police force, essentially inviting you to hunt the prick down in search of answers and retribution. It makes for a nice change-up in terms of player motivation, because let's face it, there's only so far your own interest can take you when you're only asked to simply survive. So what glamorous new destinations will you be traveling through during the course of They Hunger Part 2? Well, your first stop on your tour of zombie-based retribution will be the Warehouse District. This is a largely decrepit environment in terms of the interiors, but naturally also infested with the undead. It's got an interesting looping design where you have to thread your way through the buildings in order to reach the exit for this particular section before swiftly being deposited in that old familiar classic. That's right, it's a sewer section, everybody! Holy shit, it didn't take long at all. So, what fresh spin does They Hunger bring to this level design classic? Well, not much really. It's much the same as any sewer section you'll have visited recently. Wildly unhygienic, potentially crawling with monstrous abominations. Bonus points for the magical disappearing bull squid during this part though. I shot the thing, it didn't die, it promptly ran off, and then I never saw the thing again. Magic. Oh yeah, while I was down there, I also found this really interesting section where there's this mouse, and it's adorable, so I shot it. And then I think I triggered an Easter egg because there was just this creepy head crab that wouldn't stop bunny hopping behind the wall, and all it would say was the word come. Anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. After much flipping of switches and getting lost in general down here in the sewers, you will inevitably stumble across a newer enemy type for They Hunger, which is the wolves. And really, if we're going to get down to brass tacks, they're just hound eyes with wolf skins, minus the shockwave attack. And if I'm going to really be honest, I still prefer the hound eyes. There's just something oddly adorable about those multi-dimensional monstrosities. Who's a good abomination? Yes, you are. Yes, you. Wait, no, bad. Don't do that. Bad. Mercifully, the sewers give way to caves. The caves provide me with the wonder that is the shovel. The caves give way to a vent system leading to some kind of military bunker. It's there that I'm reminded I have the wrench and how it's so much better than the shovel. Jeez, look at it go. Then I got ran over by a truck. That was fun. Second time was a little bit more successful. I figured out you're supposed to straight up Jackie Chan that shit and jump over the top of it. And then after that it will careen on its merry way down the rest of the tunnel before blowing through the doors and allowing you access to the rest of the map. All in all, actually a really neat little set-piece moment. Genuinely surprised me the first time it happened. I'm sorry sir, you're not allowed. You're not allowed in here. This is Area 51. You can bash on the gate all you like, but you gotta be Naruto running to get through this. You gotta phase through physical matting. That's... What are you doing, Kyle? Get down from there. So yeah, it turns out that place was probably just a water treatment plant. I was getting confused because of the military soldiers kicking around, and I just instantly went, you know what, military bunker, fuck it. Anyway, you take another extended dip down below, chugging water as you go, because this guy doesn't know how to hold his goddamn breath. You evade a Sharky Boy, as you do, because what's an underwater section without a Sharky Boy to try and bite off your face? And then it's a short jump before I finally caught up with Sheriff McDeadguy.
I don't give a shit if you're worried, Doc.
The experiment shall not be interrupted.
The outsider's gonna be on our asses like stank on shit for long. Shit.
Of course! Reaching the asylum does not result in a rampage of zombie slaying. Instead, it's where the mod tones things down ever so slightly and instead focuses on trying to subtly spook the player, such as having a mysterious person open the front door for you before buggering off. Whoa! If that's not enough for you, how about a curiously deserted house with awkwardly framed pictures of Vlad the Impaler? Whoa! Perhaps spookiest of all, how about the piano that doesn't play when you press use? Whoa! In all seriousness though, there were a few moments that did effectively spook me. For example, during my endless rifling through other people's personal belongings, I thought, oh, a button on the wall. I wonder what this does. As it turns out, makes the radiator explode. Because it's full of snarks. Who'd have thunk? One of the other aspects that certainly did get to me was the feeling that I was very much not alone. Despite exploring a deserted house, there's the subtle creak of floorboards from a different floor, above, behind, or below, and you get that creeping tension of something's gonna happen. Something has to happen. When's the thing gonna happen? Anyway, meet Alfred. He just turns up out of the blue. Bit of a letdown, really. He was just awkwardly standing there while an audio tape was playing, so there wasn't any shock. It was just a, oh, hi, so you're the creepy bugger that's been following me around the entire time. Alfred largely exists to dump exposition and show you where to go next, which naturally turns out to be an underground research facility filled with, guess what? Yep, these guys again. Gotta love them. When it comes to taste in decoration for underground research labs for evil scientists, you don't see the medieval-style dungeon frontage all that often. It's a classy touch. Very Frankenstein. But this place is probably full of my favorite things in They Hunger Part 2, like this tank full of heads, one of which plaintively pleading with you to help it out. Not sure how I'd do that, because I'm not sticking my hand in that thing. Speaking of hands, here's a tank with a hand in it. Also, there's this guy. He eventually stops screaming, but he never gets free of that hook. He's very resilient. He never stops kicking. I think I went and buggered off and did my own thing for a good long while before I came back, and he was still up there, still dangling. So it's like a motivational cat poster, but with more gore. Last but not least, we get quite possibly the biggest Frankenstein reference you could hope for as of yet, introducing, in fact, a brand new enemy type, which from here on in I will refer to exclusively as the Chonker. I mean, look at him. He's an absolute unit. So yeah, if you were hoping for a resolution to the mystery of how the undead came to be, this pretty much spells it out. It was mad science all along. You know, the kind that's spelt in all caps with an exclamation mark at the end of it. Science! Anyway, that's not the only chunky you have to deal with. Upon defeating the first one, multiple chonkers turn up and start wreaking havoc around the lab, chasing off the nefarious Dr. Franklin in the process, and leading to quite possibly my favorite moment in the entire mod.
Ah, it's good to see you.
As you backtrack to the asylum proper, you discover that all hell is essentially broken loose, more chonkers are roaming the grounds, the undead have begun to rise again, and perfectly polite scientists are casually observing beating hearts on mortuary tables.
Fascinating.
Somewhat surprisingly, this section also introduces you to a new enemy type, one that I dare say is the most effectively creepy one in the entire game. Not just because it's a reanimated Skelly boy, I can get along with Skellies just fine. It's because that they have just the most unsettling voice lines out of every enemy in the entire mod.
Cold.
The initial freakout of having to deal with these things does fade relatively swiftly, especially when you realize that these are essentially reskinned Vorts. They do the exact same electricity attack and take surprisingly little damage to bring down. But that said, for the entirety of the rest of the mod, nothing makes me shudder quite like hearing those voice lines emanating from somewhere nearby. They're just too good. I like to describe what follows next as essentially a magical mystery tour of the rest of the asylum. You get the admin section, which is pretty much an homage to Office Complex from Half-Life, and then you get the doctor's residence, which functions as a little bit of downtime for you to catch your breath from all the shit hitting the respective fan. You can listen to some audio logs, you can rifle through some bedrooms, and ultimately discover what happened to the rest of the staff, variously having very bad times in bathrooms. Especially that guy. Must have been a heck of a vindaloo. The path eventually leads back outside where you can engage in some recreational wolf whacking. After that, you can engage in a lovely little bit of casual sniping against the local undead security forces. And before you know it, you've broken into the therapeutic facilities where the criminally insane are housed and where you can help them in their endeavor to become more fully functioning and well-rounded members of society. After that, it is pretty much full steam ahead all the way to the finish line. All of the enemies that the mod wanted to introduce have been introduced. All of the bits of plot have been gotten out the way, and so the only thing left to do really is burn the entire place to the ground. Because, let's face it, if any place deserves it, it's this place. But yeah, it's not very long before the place starts coming down around your ears, and you definitely feel a sense of urgency here when it comes to getting out ASAP. There's a lot of fun little sections here with the floor falling away, and the addition of a few really funny looking zombie types, such as that guy with a shotgun through his head, which I honestly thought he was going to use against me at some point. But he didn't. I don't know how I feel about that. Relieved or disappointed? Maybe a bit of both. After defeating a smorgasbord of skelly boys, chonkers, and regular zombie types, I emerged victoriously into the courtyard via a truck driven through a door, only to be comprehensively Swiss cheesed by all of the undead security lurking there. It was a little bit of a fuck you, I gotta admit, in terms of finally reaching the end of They Hunger Part 2, only to be confronted by something that, quite frankly, gave me PTSD flashbacks of some of the more awkward sections in They Hunger Part 1, and like the others of its ilk, just serves to kind of unnecessarily pad the section out, especially with the inclusion of that gun emplacement up top. Honestly, sod that thing in particular. But fear not, victory was soon attained, and all it took after that was a quick twist of the oil valve for everything to finally go big bada boom. So there you go, that was my experience with They Hunger Part 2, and I've got to say, I really enjoyed this one. It's quite the improvement over the first, and that's not to say that the first is bad, it's to say that the first had some annoying sections that stick in the craw a little bit, but this is a much smoother experience from start to finish. There's a nice increase in variety across the board too, with the levels, the way they're constructed, the way they thread together. There's the enemy types as well. Even with your common garden type zombies, they are varied in look. You get a few different types shuffled in there, a few missing faces, a few missing heads entirely, which throws up a bit of a dilemma when you want to be landing those headshots. And I'm a big fan of the new enemy types outright that have been added here with regard to the Skelly Boys and the Chonkers. It's a shame that they were added so late in the game. I would have liked to have had them interspersed throughout it sooner. They do kind of turn up all at once, but nice to have. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the application of those enemy types affects the gameplay going forward into Part 3. But as you can imagine, that will be another video entirely. With regards to Part 2, this has been a real fine continuation, effectively building on that relatively strong foundation that was introduced with They Hunger Part 1. And if you feel like giving it a whirl for yourself, you'll find the link, as usual, in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, maybe you'd like to gain early access to my videos before anyone else, heck, maybe you just enjoy the smell of burning money. If that's the case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Mod Madness. I'm particularly interested in a few spooky mods right now, what with October being right around the corner, so if you've got any of those, I'd be glad to hear about them. In any case, this has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.